this is Mr. Menifee with MCC Upward Bound, and today we're going to be talking about making apple cobbler. Okay, we're going to get our mise en place in order. We're going to get our 6 apples. This is a few more, but that's mostly because I'm checking apples. We're going to get water, which we don't need yet. We'll have a sink for that in a minute. We've got our brown sugar. We've got our cornstarch. We've got our lemon juice. We've got our vanilla extract. We have our ground cinnamon. We have our pumpkin pie spice that we used last time. Okay, we also have our salt, which is currently not seen. We have our spray oil, and we have our flour. We have our sugar. We also have our butter. We have our salt, and lastly, we have our baking powder. And of course, we'll also have some milk later on in the recipe. Okay, so for our first step, we're going to go ahead and prep our apples. So go ahead and get your 6 apples together. Also go ahead and get your lemon juice. It should be a similar container as this. Get your peeler and get whatever knife you have. Now, here's the thing. I know you have this knife, but if you have a larger one, use a larger one. All right, so let's go ahead and get in the process of peeling these apples. As you finish peeling an apple, you're going to go ahead and put it in a metal bowl, and we'll come back and we'll dice it a little bit later. But we're going to put a little bit of lemon juice on there to help preserve the color. Okay, so for the first stage of your apple, it should look like this. You've got most of this cored out, or I'm sorry, most of this peeled, except for a little section there, You may have a few light brown spots, and that's okay. Go ahead and put it in one of your bowls, and just put a squirt of lemon juice on it. This is going to help preserve the color if this takes too long. Now, I will tell you, to peel all your apples, it's going to take you, depending on your speed of peeling, and if you've used a vegetable peeler before, somewhere between 5 to 20 minutes. So, let's move on to the next step once we have those apples peeled. All right, after an indeterminate amount of time later, you now have a bunch of peeled apples. So now we're gonna go ahead and chop these apples up, and I'll show you how that works. Here for an apple party, because I got apples. All right, so let's go. Now that you've peeled your apples, let's go ahead and start slicing them. Okay, so we got a bowl full of these, and I've already kind of cut our first one. But let's kind of go through the steps of this. You should have a knife. Your knife may not be this large.
And a cutting board.
And a cutting board. Please do not cut it on your table. Please do not cut it any place.
Not on a plate.
Not on a plate. Don't use a glass cutting board because you're going to dull out your knife and possibly chip your cutting board. So, you're going to take your apple, and you're going to basically cut it into 4 sections. Okay, you're just going to go around the core. If you cut into the core too close, I'm going to do that on purpose here, you end up getting this little section right here. If you get that little section, that is chewy and hard, and so you're going to have to take your incredibly dull paring knife that we have from... Or a spoon, and you're going to have to pop that out. Now, you can eat this. You just don't want to put it in the pie, or I'm sorry, in the cobbler, because it's going to be chewy and it doesn't really ever break down properly. So, now that we got that, let's break these down the rest of the way. Okay, you're just going to cut them into sections. Okay, and what you should have is something that looks like this. Now, you can dice them smaller. You do not have to be super precise. You can do it basically like this. And you can just chop. It does not have to be precise, okay?
But what you want is to pick the same chop for all of them about, right?
Yeah, you probably want to do, whatever you're doing, do it consistently. You really want to try and have all the pieces uniform in size. It's not going to be a big deal if you got a few pieces that are small and a few pieces that are, more normal size. Just try to get them into 1/4 inch rough size pieces for everything for consistency throughout. So let's get to chopping the rest of these apples. Now that we've got your apples all cut up, let's move on to the next thing. We're going to get a few supplies together. So you're going to need your various measuring cups and measuring spoons. Okay, you're also going to need a pot, a sauce pot. Should be large enough that you can put the apples in there. Now I will tell you, it will be really full to start because the apples will cook down. But to get started, let's go ahead and kind of go from there. So I went ahead and set up my mise en place, my prep area. We're starting with our 1 cup of water in the pot. Okay, we're going next to our brown sugar. We got our 1/3 cup brown sugar. You can see I've kind of leveled it off. It's packed brown sugar. It just goes in there. Okay. Next up, we've got our cornstarch. And for our cornstarch, we have 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Knock it off. Okay. We've got lemon juice. And for lemon juice, we're going to do it not over the pot. We're going to have our tablespoon of lemon juice. Okay, there's our tablespoon of lemon juice. Next up, we've got our vanilla. And we're going to have a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Once again, don't do it over the pot. Okay, got our 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla right there. Okay. And then we have our cinnamon. Cinnamon's going to be a full teaspoon. We've got our pumpkin pie spice, and that's going to be a 1/4 teaspoon. And lastly, we have our salt. And our salt is going to be an 1/8 of a teaspoon. Now let's take this to the oven and start the cooking process. All right, so we're going to start with preheating our oven to 350 degrees. And the next step, we're going to take our aluminum foil pan that we've already cleaned out. Make sure you don't have any of the rubber sticky stuff on it. And you're going to spray it down with your spray oil. And you're going to set it to the side. Now, we're going to go ahead. We've got our oven, our stovetop, turned on to medium. And we are going to sit here and we're going to stir this until it is combined. You want to make sure that you're getting your lumps out. You definitely don't want lumpy cornstarch in here. The cornstarch is essential for thickening. If you ever have gravy or anything like that, cornstarch is a pretty standard thing. And I let it sit a little too long. Also, guys, try to mix it up immediately when you do it, or you will have to be dealing with lumps, and I'm breaking up lumps right now. So now I've got everything's combined and it's heating up, and we're going to go ahead and add the apples. Now we're just going to start the stirring process, and we got it on a medium, and you might want to lower it just a little bit below medium. And we're just going to be stirring this for a few minutes. Now,
3 to 5 minutes.
3 to 5 minutes until stuff is kind of broken down, and you'll see it in a few minutes. So you want to go ahead and get the apples, and I did 5 minutes here. You can see the apples reduced a lot. You do not want to overcook this, or it will turn the syrup into caramel. And whereas that sounds like a great thing now, it's really not. Okay, the apples should have a certain degree of softness to them. So drop that one. Okay, they're going to have a little bit of crunch to them still, a little bit soft. Take a fork. That's good. It's going to be a little bit crunchy, but it's also going to be on the soft side. Okay, at this point, you're going to pour it into your pot.
Your pan.
Sorry, your pan that you've already prepared the mixture
From
for.
the pot.
From the pot. Just pour it directly in. Make sure you get all that apple goodness and cinnamon magic in there. Next step is optional, which means you do not have to do this. Okay, you're going to take a 1/2 cup of pecans, okay, or walnuts, depending on your preferences, and you're just going to sprinkle a 1/2 cup on there consistently over. Now, like I said, it's optional. You do not have to put the nuts on there at all, but if you'd like to, go for it. Honestly, I just like the taste of nuts with apples. And make sure at this point, take a picture of your apples or your apples and your nuts mixture. So it should look something like this. Now that we've done our filling and our oven's preheating, we're now going to go ahead and make our topping. So what's in our topping? Well, you've got 1 cup of sugar. By the way, I pre-measured all of this. You've got 1 cup of flour. Remember, just kind of pour it in, don't pack it, and then just level it off. Also, try not to make as dramatic a mess as I just did. Okay, you've got a half teaspoon, I'm sorry, not a half teaspoon, that's not correct. Yeah, you have a half teaspoon of salt. Now this is a quarter teaspoon, so we're gonna do this twice. 1 and 2. That's just a half teaspoon total, so this is a quarter teaspoon. I'm not doubling up on the salt, okay? You gotta be careful not to do that. And then lastly, we're gonna go ahead and add some baking powder, okay? And we are going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So my teaspoon measure here. Got my container of Clabber Girl. 1. And 2. Once you have your dry ingredients, you're just gonna have a fork and you're just gonna stir this for maybe 30 seconds or so until it is nicely combined. There's no reason for you to, have to do anything other than that at this point. Okay? Now, once you have it nicely combined, we're gonna go ahead and add the liquid ingredients. Okay, so let's talk about butter. Okay? You're going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tablespoons, and you're just going to cut it with a knife when it's cold. And you're going to stick it into a small container, and you're going to microwave it on low until you've got 5 tablespoons of melted butter. Do not try to melt an entire stick of butter and then pour it into a measuring thing. It does not work. Just trust me on this one, all right? Now, you're going to go ahead and add your butter, and this is your 5 tablespoons of melted butter. Okay, to your dry mixture. And now you're going to add 3/4 cup of milk to your dry mixture as well. You're just going to go and kind of stir it until combined, which means that you're not going to beat this thing a lot. Okay, now, right now, I've just got the fork. I'm kind of getting a nice little mixture here, but I'm getting a lot of clumping at the bottom. And so at some point, you're going to want to go ahead and translate to a spatula so you can get everything. So nothing dry, no dry particles on the top, no dry particles on the side. And now I've switched to my spatula. I'm just kind of making sure we got everything combined. And we're gonna go pour it on the cobbler topping. Now this is gonna be more like a cake batter as opposed to a pie batter, okay? This is more gonna be a soft dumpling topping and not a kind of like more southern kind of crispy pie topping. So let's go ahead and pour it on. We're just gonna go back and forth, lightly drizzling this until the vast majority of it is covered. And then you get to the scraping part of it. Okay, so we're going to smooth it out just a little bit. We don't really want to have anything exposed. And I'm just very, very lightly kind of smoothing it around. Now, it will smooth out some more on its own. But looks like we've got it about as good as we're going to get right now. If you can get a little more smooth out than mine, awesome. You should go for it. But it will work. You just want to get it kind of as best you can. All right, so we're about to put this in the oven. So now take a picture at this stage, and we are gonna go ahead and stick it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you've already preheated your oven for 35 to 40 minutes. All right, so after about 40 minutes, I went ahead and pulled it out and I've checked it, and I've got a nice little crust for me on top. I've got a little bit of softness underneath. I kind of pulled a little area. That is going to be a little bit soupy, but you're gonna have to let it set for about 20-30 minutes after it comes out of the oven so it can finish cooking. But it's good to eat right now if you really wanted to, but it's gonna be really, really hot. So I recommend, if you're not gonna eat it all, cover it with the, once it cools down, cover it with saran wrap all the way and enjoy. I am personally gonna eat a little tiny bit of it with some whipped cream. So, I hope you enjoy, and you've got 2 sets of ingredients for this, so you can take it with your family to Thanksgiving. Enjoy, and happy Thanksgiving.